When you pray, do you believe that God will answer you? And what about Jesus when he prays? Does God answer him? Today we're going to look at Jesus in prayer. As we come to John 17, Jesus' earthly journey is nearly complete. Here we are at the end of the so-called upper room discourse. Some people call it the farewell discourse. Jesus has washed his disciples' feet. Together they've shared that final meal where Jesus broke bread and wine and gave it to them. Jesus has told them it's time for him to leave. The end is near. Judas has left to do what he must do. And Jesus is troubled in spirit. He knows his friends will soon let him down, abandon him. Peter will deny him. Jesus is feeling the weight of the world. In the 17th chapter of John's Gospel, we read Jesus' longest recorded prayer. If you haven't read this very recently, I encourage you to pause the video right now and go and have a reflective read. And if you don't want to pause now, make sure you spend some time after you watch this video reflecting in the words of Jesus. When I look closely at the words of Jesus' prayer, I find it seems a bit rambling to me. It's not super organised or well planned. I don't know what you make of that. Have you ever prayed rambling prayers? I certainly have. And when I reflect on Jesus praying here, it seems to me he's so human. He's just like me. Jesus begins by praying for himself, that he might be glorified. Make no mistake, Jesus knows how tough things are about to get, but he wants one thing: to be glorified. Why? So that his Father might receive glory. This isn't about Jesus at all. It's about his Father. And then Jesus prays for his disciples. Jesus prays three things for his disciples. Firstly, that they might be one. Unity is so important to Jesus. Jesus knows how tough it's about to get for his disciples, so he prays that they might be protected from the enemy. Thirdly, Jesus prays for their sanctification. This is a word which has been subject to all sorts of doctrinal debate across the history of the church. Jesus is simply praying that God will, step by step, shape the disciples into the people he made them to be. Then Jesus blows my mind with these words: "My prayer is not for them alone. I also pray for those who will believe in me through their message." He's praying for Jesus' followers throughout history, and that includes you and me. Jesus is praying for us, that we might be one, that we might be protected from the enemy, and that we might be shaped step by step into the people that God created us to be. Jesus unpacks it further, praying that we might be in him and that he might be in us. Remember, he's just finished talking about how he's the vine and we're the branches, and now he's praying that we might be able to abide in him, so that we can be fruitful, so that we can have unity, so that the world can see that we're his disciples, so that he can be glorified, so that God can be glorified through him. Do we believe that it's possible for us to be one in the way that Jesus is one with his Father? Jesus did, otherwise he wouldn't have prayed for it. Did Jesus say amen at the end of his prayer? Can we say amen at the end of his prayer? Here are some questions to ponder. Sit with them. Discuss them amongst yourselves. Share them in your small groups. When you're under pressure, how do your prayers look? Reflecting on your own prayers and looking at the prayers of Jesus, what encouragement do you find in the way Jesus prays? When in your life have you experienced answers to the prayers that Jesus is praying for you here? Are there times when you've experienced supernatural unity? When have you known protection from the enemy? And what about sanctification? What's your experience of being shaped into the person that God made you to be? Can you say amen to Jesus' prayer? What if amen is more than a word? What if saying amen is a commitment to living out our lives as an outworking of Jesus' prayer? How might we live out our lives in such a way that people might see that we are one, so that they might know that we're followers of Jesus, so that people might be pointed to Jesus and that his Father might be glorified.